Welcome back to Morning Joy, where truth matters. I'm your host, Keith Downey, and we're going to be talking the next right thing when someone is sinning. How do we appropriately tell them that they're sinning? We're going to find out more with Debbie Georgiani and Adam Blai. Good morning.
Good morning, Keith. Happy Monday to you. Adam and I are so glad to be here for the next right thing. The only problem is we could do 10 shows on this topic because it's very deep and it's complicated. You have to look at various situations and circumstances. But Adam and I will take a good, attempt at it for this short segment here on Morning Joy. But the one thing I just wanted to say to our listeners, if you've ever been in a situation with family or friends where you've had to face this, where you saw something that was really wrong, it was really against God, as a baptized Christian, what is our responsibility? Do we have peace at any cost? Do we try to elevate that person out of the situation by trying to talk to them and get them to see things clearly? It's very hard to do sometimes in families. If you had a situation and you can share what the outcome was, please, if you could add to this discussion, do it quickly. The phone lines are open, 877-757-9424. Okay, Adam, I kind of set the intro there, but you know where I'm going with this. I mean, we were having a big discussion right before the show started airing this morning, and we could talk about this for hours.
Yeah, Deb, it's of course not a simple answer. Like a lot of things with human beings, it's complicated and it depends on the particular situation and the particular people. And that's not a cop-out, but so let me give you some examples of that. So here's a couple questions we could ask, and they could steer us to closer to an answer. So first question, and jump in any time, Deb, because I really am interested in your thoughts too. The first question I would ask is it a grave matter or not? Meaning, is this a very serious sin that we know can lead to a state of spiritual death, breaking that relationship with God until the person were to repent of that. So there's a greater burden on us to at least inform the person. And I think inform might be a better way to phrase it as we think about this. Confrontation, depending on who's thinking about it, can seem very kind of violent, even just verbally violent, or judgmental or things like that. So number one, is it a grave matter or not? Meaning, are they breaking one of the 10 commandments? Is it going to lead to a state of mortal sin? Number two, is this a Christian person, a Catholic Christian person that is ostensibly following God's laws? And maybe they don't know. I encounter this all the time, Deb, in the work that I do, having those initial conversations with people that are in trouble with the spiritual life, the spiritual world, because, I work in the area of helping with exorcisms. So a lot of people don't know God's laws. And that's a really interesting thing that we need to check in with the person about. Do they even know? If they say they're Christian or, they're Catholic Christian, do they know the laws? And then we need to inform them. The third question would be, are they merely drifting away from God's ideal in life? Maybe they're just being selfish and less charitable. God's ideal kind of model of society versus heading towards a landmine. So if a person maybe isn't being as kind as they could, or they're young and they're experimenting with drinking a little bit, and, they're drifting, versus a person who's saying, I want to dive into the occult and practicing dangerous practices that not only violate God's law, but they're a landmine. That's a question. Here's the next one, Deb, and this one, I think, in a sense, can be the deal breaker or not, and that is there a relationship already established, a loving relationship or a relationship of charity is another way to say it, to keep the experience of confrontation in a positive context for that person. Like if I go up to a stranger on the street and just out of the blue say, I don't like that shirt you're wearing. You need to know, mister, that you're not supposed to wear a purple shirt, and I'm going to tell you how it is, and you better go obey me. That's going to be experienced very differently than somebody that you're you have a friendship with, and you're sitting and talking, and you bring it up, and say, and I've noticed this, and I really like you and I appreciate our relationship, but I need to let you know this. That can really completely change the situation, and that's why it's within a context of within a proper context that these things can be helpful. And here's the last one, Deb, that I was thinking about. Do you have a particular responsibility to this person before God? Now, you do have a particular responsibility to inform the conscience of somebody in general, but that doesn't mean you have to run around the world telling everybody how to live their life. But when you have a special, particular responsibility, for instance, as a parent, or the religious leader of a community, or somebody appointed to do a job within the church, that is a particular responsibility where there's much greater onus on you to do something. So, for instance, a parent raising a child and needing to teach them. So there's my questions, Deb. What do you think?
Oh, I like all the questions, and I wrote them down, and I just wanted to comment on a couple things. But let me just state again the phone number. If you have something to add to this discussion, please call in now. Don't wait. 877-757-9424. Okay, so going back to the first one, is this a grave matter? Let me give you a scenario, and then you tell me if you think this situation warranted for somebody to step up and say something, okay?
Mm-hmm.
There's a funeral of a somewhat famous local person, right? And the funeral happens, and the family member, it's Catholic, and the family members are coming to the funeral, and a lot of and it's clear, there's no confusion about the situation at all. There were certain family members that attended the funeral mass. They were not living in the Catholic faith. They had not gone to reconciliation. They were totally distant from the church, but were somewhat told by the family and the people there at the who were planning the funeral that they were okay to go receive communion, so that they weren't embarrassed in case there were any, attendees of the funeral or any, they were okay to receive communion. Should a practice, how would you have approached that? First of all, I am so glad I wasn't at that funeral. I actually know this is a situation that I'm familiar with. For some reason, I did not attend. And I'm telling you, Adam, if I had seen that, my head would have blown off.
Mm-hmm.
What do you say about that? Should they have stood up? Should somebody have said, hey, sorry, it's embarrassing, but you're not living in the Catholic faith. You have no intention of coming back at this point. You have not gone to confession. I'm sorry that you're embarrassed, but you don't want to do this. This is dangerous for your soul.
Yeah, basically I agree with you there, Deb, because that's an answer to the second question. Is this a person a Catholic Christian? So ostensibly...
Yes, they're baptized. They were baptized Catholic. There was two of them. But
right.
Go ahead.
And so ostensibly they need to be following these rules. They, in theory, should know these rules, and if they don't know them, they need to be informed. But here's the reason I would say you do need to say something, and it's incumbent on you. Like, you're going to be held responsible at your judgment of whether you said something, because it's so clearly in God's law in the sense that it's scriptural. Paul tells us, and I don't have it in front of me because we're just having a discussion. Paul tells us that we want to be careful not to receive communion unworthily because it brings condemnation on ourselves. That's
exactly right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it is incumbent on you, if you see somebody about to do that they're ostensibly a Catholic Christian, they should know this, but they're stepping on a landmine if they do that. And it is so clear in God's law that, yes, you do need to inform them, because at some point in your personal judgment, when God is reviewing your life, and we don't know exactly how this works, but we know that we're going to be held accountable for everything that we did. What are you going to say when Jesus says you were watching this person about to do something that was going to bring condemnation on themselves?
And why didn't
you help them?
Yeah. Well, and I can tell you that the people that stood up and basically gave them a pass, to receive communion felt that, oh, God will understand that the reasoning, God will understand. God sees that, this is a situation that's very unique, and so that it doesn't bring, so that you're not embarrassed. Being embarrassed, it makes no sense to me when you're talking about your soul, and heaping a mortal sin on top of another sin makes no sense. Why would embarrassment even be a factor, Adam? It should really always be, especially for us as Catholic Christians, the soul first about everything. So I don't understand why and I think that happens a lot in families. Oh, we don't want so-and-so to feel ashamed, or we don't want so-and-so to feel embarrassed. We don't want so-and-so to feel excluded. We don't want to move somebody out of the picture because of their lifestyle. Why does that? I guess I'm struggling personally, because I don't understand why that's an issue, unless if you know something different that God is saying from heaven in the work that you do in exorcisms. Is there any indication that God's saying, yeah, I guess certain situations you can give a pass and just and break all these commands and break all these rules just so that to make somebody feel comfortable? What do you say to that?
No, that's not what we see. And for those that don't know, what Deb is referring to, when we deal with people that are in bondage in the terms of possession, the evil spirits, they're only bound by what Jesus commands that they can and cannot do. And when they have to leave, he commands that it's over. And through his church and the authority he's given it, they're cast out. And so these creatures will dig their heels in and lay claim to a person and to not leaving based on basically what God's laws are, because ultimately God is the one that forces them out. And so we see that over and over the years in the cases, that until the person sincerely repents of whatever let the spirit into them, into their life, it's not cast out. They will not only say, I'm not leaving, I don't have to, he's not making me leave, because this person will not let go of this sin or this unforgiveness that they have. They are bound by that. Humans are bound by God's laws. God is not bound by human laws. So, yeah, it's not about being comfortable. Jesus, I don't think, was about being comfortable for people. Mm-hmm. He wanted people to follow the law.
Right. Okay, so let's hold it right there, and that'll give me a chance just to calm down a bit. I'm getting fired up on a Monday. I can't do that, Adam, because then I'm not good the rest of the week. But this topic, as you can tell, Keith, is a hot topic, and it pushes all the buttons, especially when we're trying to keep our families together and moving forward. And it's tough. It's tough being a Christian in the world today. But this is why we do shows like this, to try and educate and inform and catechize. But we'll send it back to you, Keith, for those announcements. And then, Adam, when we come back, the final segment, hopefully we'll get some calls.
Yeah, awesome. And yes, we're taking phone calls, live calls right now. If you've been in a situation, maybe it's you're hosting a wedding and you're not sure how to communicate to your fellow family that are Catholic, fallen away. What do you say to them? How do you communicate it to them? 877-757-9424. Give us a call. We'll see you right after this break on Morning Joy, where truth matters.
You're listening to Morning Joy, where truth matters.
Our family has spanned the centuries and the globe. With God's grace, we started hospitals to care for the sick. We established orphanages and help the poor. We are the largest charitable organization on the planet, bringing comfort to those in need. We educate more children than any other institution. We developed the scientific method and founded the college system. We defend the dignity of human life and uphold marriage. Guided by the Holy Spirit, we compiled the Bible. We are transformed by sacred scripture and sacred tradition, which have guided us for 2,000 years. We are the Catholic Church. With over 1 billion in our family, sharing in the sacraments and fullness of the Christian faith. Jesus started our church when he said to Peter, the first pope, "You are rock, and upon this rock I will build my church." So if you've been away from the Catholic Church, we invite you to take another look. Visit CatholicsComeHome.org today. We are Catholic. Welcome home.
Hi, I'm Adam Blai with Debbie Georgiani from the Spirit World.
Questions and comments from our listeners come into the Spirit World on a regular basis.
Maybe your question will get answered on this month's mailbag edition for the month of April.
That's this Saturday at 10 a.m. Central, 11 a.m. Eastern.
Right here on the Guadalupe Radio Network.
And don't forget to like us on Facebook at the Spirit World Podcast.
Or send your question into tsw@grnonline.com.
Welcome back to Morning Joy, where truth matters. I'm your host, Keith Downey, and we're continuing this conversation on when it's appropriate or not appropriate to call someone out on their sins. Debbie Georgiani and Adam Blai.
Thank you, Keith. Yeah, we're going to pick up where we left off about this, but Adam, I'm glad you shared that about the exorcism, the weekly exorcism work that you do. But let's go back to this for a moment, and I'm really not joking about it. I can't get my blood pressure super high at Monday because I got to pace myself all week because, Adam, we're going to be in Dallas on Saturday for the great event, and I'm super excited about that. So, folks, if you want to secure your seat at the special broadcast we're going to be doing for Guadalupe Radio Network, please go to grnonline.com/TSW live. It's this Saturday, and we're getting a phone call, Adam. So just keep that in mind as we just finish up our thoughts on this. So, Adam, the reason why I get so disturbed and it troubles me is because I notice that a lot of these violations of God's commandments, oftentimes it can center around Mass, the Holy Mass. And what I mean by that is, people will say things like, well, don't judge, you should just be glad they're showing up at Mass, or don't make an assessment. You should be, God understands, and he's so appreciative that they made the effort. It's very interesting how a lot of times it does circle around Mass. And I find that so troubling because the Eucharist is everything to us as Catholic Christians. It's the source and summit of the Christian life. And is that maybe part of the problem why we see such a disregard for the Eucharist, or doubt, or the unbelief? I mean, I don't think that serves anybody by compromising and lowering the bar and making things okay just because Jesus was 100%, he was all human. So obviously he understands what you're going through, and he empathizes and sympathizes. So don't worry, Jesus understands. I think that's a really false thing to put out there for people because they cling to it, and I don't know if that's going to really serve them well.
Yeah, Deb, this is just my thought on that. So Mass is basically, for most of life, is the one time where God actually asks us to do something. So it's easy to sit around and kind of think, oh, I'm a good person, and, I try to go do good things most of the time, and everything's fine, and God loves me, and I'll be fine. It's easy to say that from the armchair. It's another thing to actually get up, get a shower, get in the car, the truck, and drive somewhere and spend some time out of your day, because God's actually asking you to do something and maybe give up a little bit of time and effort for him. And so Mass is usually, where the rubber meets the road for most people on most occasions, which is, I've got to actually spend some time on God versus just having a few thoughts that everything's fine. Right. And so it's a very challenging moment. And at the core of it, I think, Deb, is exactly what you said, and that is not understanding the Eucharist. Mm-hmm. If we understood the privilege that we've been given, that God has given the world through him being present in the Eucharist, and then the privilege that we as Catholics have to receive communion, and how special that is, all the graces that come through that, if we really understood that, as one priest friend told me years ago, we would enter the church on our hands and knees.
Right. Padre Pio used to say that. Yeah.
Yeah. If we really understood what we've been given.
Right.
And so it's a great kind of disrespect and a great wound to our relationship with Jesus when we don't.
Right. Right. Absolutely. Okay. Let's get to Tim from Findlay, Ohio, because he's been waiting. Tim, welcome to The Next Right Thing.
Good morning.
Good morning. We only have a couple minutes, but we wanted to squeeze you in.
Well, I'll just make it real quick. I think I was guilty during my mother's funeral because I was kind of in charge of making sure everything, unofficially in charge of making sure everything went okay. And so I actually, allowed, siblings and cousins that were fallen, fallen away from the faith, get communion. I did not realize that until it dawned on me when you guys were talking.
Right, but keep in mind, Tim, and let's real quickly, Adam, we got to go fast. Tim, you were not aware, so that's very different than what I'm talking about with these people that were fully aware, and I mean fully aware. They were active in the church. They knew that it was a really serious sin to receive unworthily, but yet they compromised and felt that but that God would understand given the circumstances. So that's different, right, Adam?
Yeah, Deb, it kind of goes back to the definition of a mortal sin. And that is, number one, we know that it's a law of God. It's basically one of the 10 Commandments. We know that, and then we choose to do it anyway.
That's right.
And so if you inform somebody's conscience and say, like in this case, he didn't know. And so in terms of, you go before the judge and say, I literally didn't know that this was against the law. I'm sorry, I won't do it again now that I understand that. Mm-hmm. That would be one conversation with a judge, thinking of God. But another is, my conscience was informed. I knew full well that this was wrong, but I chose to ignore it anyway.
Exactly.
And that bears a greater kind of response from God.
Right. So that should bring you some peace, Tim. And this is the reason why we're doing shows like this. And the next right thing is to try and inform people and educate and catechize in a way so that they're prepared for all of these scenarios that can happen and arise in a family or just really quickly so that they're ready to go as Catholic Christians. But thank you, Tim.
Yep, no problem. Just pray for them, and because they're still far from the faith.
Right. You're right. And the power of prayer. Thank you so much, Timoteo. Have a beautiful day. And we'll catch you again real soon, probably on the next show. So that'll be wonderful. But Adam, so with that, why don't we commit to this, Adam, doing a whole entire episode of the spirit world on this topic? Because I think it could really help folks feel confident in how they engage with their family and friends. What do you say?
Sure. I think that sounds good. And I think we could find some good stuff in the Church Fathers, in the Catechism, and the saints also on this topic.
Okay, perfect. All righty, so that'll do it for the next right thing. We'll send it back to our wonderful host, Keith Downey.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Debbie and Adam. And also thank you, Tim, for calling in. And yes, if you're looking for more Debbie Georgiani and Adam Blai, you can always catch them every single weekday on the next right thing on Morning Joy, where truth matters. But we can even extend it even further, because every Saturday, you've got the Spirit World, okay? And that's 10 a.m. Central every single Saturday. And if you even want more, the Spirit World, well, you can catch them in Dallas on April 20th. That's a Saturday at the Terry Center at the Jesuit College Prep School in Dallas. And this is an exclusive live broadcast of the Spirit World. You've been probably hearing promos all over about it. So this means you can get your questions on angels, demons, and how the spiritual and the physical worlds can interact, answered live by who you just heard, Debbie Georgiani and Adam Blai. The doors open at 6:30 p.m., and this is only, 5 days away. So for tickets and for more information, you need to go to grnonline.com/TSW. That's grnonline.com/TSW live. Now, in case you missed it a little bit earlier ago, as far as the question of the day, I feel like bring that up to give you a quick reminder that we do play daily trivia. So today's question is, which saint and bishop of Milan is symbolized as a beehive because of his eloquence? Which saint and bishop of Milan is symbolized as a beehive because of his eloquence? Now, if you're looking at the answers, you'll probably be like, okay, I know exactly who this individual is. I had to think about it, and then I looked at the answers. I'm like, okay, that makes sense. So you can see those answers, by the way. You got to go to grnonline.com/joy to play to win. And we just gave away our prize of the week of last week, which we'll talk a little bit further. But that means you get to play for this upcoming gift. And yes, thank you, Tim. Nash, if you're listening or watching right now, please check your email. You're the winner of the previous prize last week, so please check your email. And the funny thing is, he's already played for this coming prize. Check your email, Nash. But you could win this week 12 Rules for Manliness. Where Have All the Cowboys Gone by Bear Wozniak. He was actually interviewed by us on Morning Joy last week, I believe, or the week before. Check it out, GRN Online on YouTube. We've even taken a clip or two on all of our social medias, whether it's YouTube or Instagram. So check that out as well, GRN Online. But hey, can ancient sermons teach us something new? Maybe. We got to check in with Monsignor Charles Pope with Mondays with Monsignor Pope. So stay tuned right after this break.
You're listening to Morning Joy, where truth matters.